Listen carefully, because what I am about to share is not noise. It is something rising from the deeper layers of the psyche, something that refuses to stay hidden. There is someone in your life whose presence has not faded, even if their voice has. In the language of the unconscious, silence is never empty. It carries meaning, tension, and messages waiting to be understood. This urgency you feel is not a coincidence. It is the psyche attempting to close a gap that words have failed to bridge. According to Carl Jung, what we fail to face consciously will eventually appear in our lives as fate. And right now, something is trying to emerge, an emotion, a truth, a realization, from someone who has been deeply connected to you. This person may lack the courage or clarity to express it directly, but their inner world is in motion. Their silence is not indifference, it is inner conflict. Their distance is not absence, it is reflection. You may have noticed subtle shifts, dreams, recurring thoughts, sudden memories, or an unexplainable pull toward this person. These are not random events. They are signals from the unconscious, both yours and theirs, trying to align. When two people share a deep psychological bond, their inner worlds begin to communicate beyond the limits of physical interaction. This is where the message exists, not in spoken language, but in felt experience. There is something they want you to understand, something they were unable to say before. Perhaps they misunderstood you. Perhaps they avoided something they were not strong enough to face. But now, in your absence or silence, they are starting to see more clearly. Your withdrawal has become a mirror, pushing them to confront their own emotions, their fears, and the truth they once chose to ignore. Do not ignore this moment, not because you need to act impulsively, but because awareness is necessary. Ignoring what you feel means suppressing a part of your own psyche that is trying to guide you. This does not mean you should chase or force anything. In fact, the opposite is true. The strength lies in your stillness, in your awareness, and in your ability to observe without reacting blindly. This person's message is not simply about words like "come back" or "I miss you." It goes deeper than that. It is about realization. It reflects their growing understanding of your value, the depth of your connection, and the mistake of creating distance from it. Chapter 2. Why you can't stop thinking about them, however. Realization alone is not enough. They are still dealing with their inner confusion. What matters now is your position. Are you aware of your own emotions? Have you understood what this connection truly means to you beyond desire or attachment? Because this moment is not only about them. It is also about you reaching a higher level of self-awareness. When you understand yourself, you naturally begin to understand the dynamic between you and others. The urgent message is not something you read or hear. It is something you feel. It exists in the tension, the pull, and the quiet moments when your mind returns to them without any clear reason. That is where truth begins to speak. And if you are willing to listen, not with fear or expectation, but with awareness, you will start to understand what is truly being communicated. Do not ignore it. Not because it demands immediate action, but because it deserves your understanding. There is a strong emotional message trying to reach you, not through direct words, but through subtle shifts in energy, silence, and inner awareness that you may have already sensed without fully understanding. This kind of message does not arrive in obvious ways. Instead, it appears quietly, often when you are alone with your thoughts, or when something unexpectedly reminds you of that person. According to Carl Jung, the unconscious mind communicates through symbols, emotions, and patterns rather than direct language. What you are experiencing right now is not accidental. It is a form of psychological communication that goes beyond ordinary interaction. This person, who shares a deep connection with you is likely going through an internal struggle where their true feelings are starting to surface, even if they are not yet able to express them outwardly. Their silence may seem confusing, but it often carries more meaning than spoken words because it reflects a process of realization taking place within them. You might feel an unusual pull toward them, a sudden wave of memories, or a sense that something unresolved is returning to your awareness. These feelings should not be dismissed as imagination. Instead, they are signals that something meaningful is unfolding beneath the surface. The human psyche does not easily release significant emotional bonds. And when something important is left unsaid or unresolved, it tends to reappear in subtle ways until it is acknowledged. This is why ignoring such inner signals can create restlessness or emotional tension, as if something remains incomplete. The message itself may not be a simple apology or confession, but rather a deeper realization that this person is beginning to understand the value of what they once shared with you. They may be reflecting on past actions, recognizing mistakes, or feeling the absence of your presence more strongly than before. At the same time, they may feel uncertain about how to approach you or whether they even should, which creates a gap between what they feel and what they express. This inner conflict often leads to silence, distance, or indirect signals that can be difficult to interpret. Chapter 3. The power of the unconscious connection, however. Your role in this moment is not to chase or force clarity from them, but to stay aware of your own emotional state and the signals you are receiving. Awareness allows you to observe without becoming overwhelmed, to understand without reacting impulsively, and to recognize the deeper meaning behind what is happening. When you become conscious of these subtle messages, you begin to see that they are not about control or urgency, but about understanding and alignment between two inner worlds. This is why the message feels urgent, not because it demands immediate action, but because it is trying to reach your awareness before it fades back into the unconscious. There is someone connected to you who is currently experiencing a deep inner conflict, a struggle between what they feel and what they are able to express. This tension is far more intense than it may appear on the surface. Their silence is not a sign of indifference, nor is it simply a choice to stay away. Instead, it reflects something unresolved within their own psyche. As Carl Jung suggested, the human mind often avoids confronting emotions that feel overwhelming, choosing instead to suppress or distance itself from them. However, what is suppressed does not disappear. It becomes stronger within the unconscious, waiting for the right moment to rise again. This is exactly what is happening with this person. They are being drawn into a process of realization that they cannot easily avoid, and it is pushing them to face emotions they may have ignored, denied, or misunderstood in the past. At the same time, your own shift in energy, whether through distance, silence, or a change in how you engage, has acted as a catalyst for this internal awakening within them. When you step back, you remove the comfort they once depended on, and in that absence, they are left alone with their true feelings. This creates a kind of psychological mirror, where they begin to clearly see what your presence meant to them and what your absence now reveals. It is often only when something is no longer easily available that its true value becomes clear. This realization can be both powerful and unsettling. They may find themselves revisiting memories, reinterpreting past interactions, and questioning decisions they once felt certain about. This process is not comfortable, which is why they may continue to remain silent or distant, even as their inner world becomes more active and emotionally intense. You might notice this shift indirectly, not through direct communication, but through subtle signs that are difficult to explain logically. There may be moments when you strongly feel their presence in your thoughts, or when certain emotions arise without any clear external cause. These experiences are not random. They reflect the deep psychological connection that still exists between you. When two individuals share a meaningful bond, their inner worlds can remain connected even when physical or verbal contact is reduced. This is why their internal struggle can, in a sense, also be felt by you. It is not about mystical thinking, but about how emotional connections leave lasting imprints on the psyche. Their conflict also involves fear. Fear of vulnerability, fear of rejection, or fear of confronting the truth about what they feel. These fears can create a barrier that prevents them from taking action, even when their realization becomes clear. They may want to reach out and express what they are going through, but something within them holds them back, creating a cycle of hesitation and reflection. Chapter 4. Their silence has a meaning. This is why their behavior may seem inconsistent or confusing as they move between moments of clarity and moments of doubt. What is important for you to understand is that their silence does not mean nothing is happening. In fact, it often means the opposite. It suggests that something significant is unfolding within them, something that takes time to process and understand. This connection you are experiencing cannot be fully explained through logic alone, because it operates on a level that goes beyond conscious reasoning and enters the deeper layers of the psyche, where meaning is felt rather than analyzed. As Carl Jung emphasized, there are aspects of human relationships that exist within the unconscious, where symbols, emotions, and shared experiences create bonds that are not easily broken by distance or time. What you are feeling is rooted in that deeper space where two individuals become psychologically connected through moments of authenticity, vulnerability, and emotional intensity. This is why, even in silence, the connection does not disappear. It continues to exist beneath the surface, influencing thoughts, emotions, and even behavior in ways that may not be immediately clear. At the same time, this moment you are in represents more than just a continuation of that bond. It is a psychological turning point, a shift where both you and the other person are being guided toward greater awareness. These turning points do not come with clear instructions or direct communication, but they carry a sense of urgency that is felt internally. You may notice that your perspective is changing, that you are beginning to question what this connection truly means, not only in terms of emotional attachment, but also in terms of personal growth and understanding. This is not accidental. When the unconscious begins to bring something important to the surface, it does so in a way that demands attention, even if it does not immediately provide clarity. For the other person, this turning point may feel even more intense because they are likely confronting aspects of themselves that they have avoided for a long time. Your presence in their life, and now your absence or shift in energy, has disrupted their usual patterns and pushed them into a state of reflection. They may be realizing how their own fears, insecurities, or past experiences influenced the way they treated you or how they handled the connection. This realization can be uncomfortable because it requires them to take responsibility for emotions they may have once ignored or projected outward. As a result, they may appear distant or inactive, not because they do not care, but because they are processing something internally that feels significant and, at times, overwhelming. You, on the other hand, are also being guided through this turning point, but in a different way. Instead of being pulled into confusion, you are being invited into awareness. This means recognizing that the connection is real, while also understanding that your role is not to control or force its outcome. The deeper lesson here is about balance. Chapter 5. What they are realizing now, it involves being able to feel the connection without losing yourself in it, and understanding its importance without becoming dependent on its resolution. This is where true psychological growth takes place. When you can observe what is happening both within you and around you without reacting impulsively. The urgency of this moment comes from the fact that such turning points do not last forever in their most intense form. They are windows of opportunity where insight becomes more accessible, where emotions rise closer to the surface, and where meaningful change becomes possible. If this moment is ignored, it does not mean the connection will disappear, but it may return to the unconscious, becoming less clear and more difficult to understand. This is why your awareness matters so much right now, because it allows you to engage with what is happening on a deeper level rather than letting it pass unnoticed. Ignoring the intuitive signals that are emerging within you at this moment may seem like the easier path, especially when what you are feeling does not come with clear explanations or certainty. However, doing so can delay an important emotional and psychological breakthrough that is trying to unfold. These signals are not random or meaningless. They are subtle communications from the deeper layers of your mind, guiding you towards something that requires your attention and awareness. As Carl Jung observed, the psyche constantly seeks balance. When something significant remains unresolved, it finds ways to bring it back into conscious awareness. This often appears as feelings that are difficult to ignore, recurring thoughts, or moments when your attention is repeatedly drawn back to a particular person or experience without any clear reason. When you choose to ignore these signals, you are not truly removing them. Instead, you are pushing them back into the unconscious, where they continue to exist and influence you indirectly. This can create a sense of unease, a feeling that something is unfinished or incomplete, even if you try to convince yourself otherwise. The mind does not easily release what it considers important, especially when it involves deep emotional connections. Instead, it tends to repeat patterns, bringing the same feelings or themes back into your awareness until they are properly understood. This is why you may find yourself thinking about this person at unexpected moments or experiencing sudden emotional shifts that seem to come from nowhere. These are not distractions. They are invitations to pay attention. There is also a deeper consequence to ignoring such intuitive signals, and that is the loss of clarity. When you suppress what you feel, you begin to disconnect from your own inner guidance, making it harder to distinguish between what is meaningful and what is not. Over time, this can lead to confusion, where you no longer trust your own perceptions or instincts. In contrast, when you allow yourself to acknowledge these signals without immediately reacting to them, you create space for understanding to develop naturally. Awareness does not require action. It requires presence. It means allowing yourself to notice what you feel, observe it without judgment, and reflect on what it may be pointing toward. This moment is especially important because the signals you are receiving are connected not only to your own inner state, but also to the emotional process of another person. There is a kind of alignment taking place, where both of you are being drawn toward a deeper realization, even if it is unfolding in different ways. If you ignore this moment, you risk missing the opportunity to understand the connection on a more profound level. This does not mean that you must immediately act or reach out, but it does mean that you should remain open to what is being revealed to you internally. Chapter 6. The emotional turning point. At times, it may feel uncomfortable to sit with these feelings, especially when they bring uncertainty or challenge your previous understanding of the situation. However, discomfort is often a sign that something meaningful is taking place beneath the surface. Growth rarely happens in complete comfort. It requires a willingness to face what is unclear and to remain present even when answers are not immediately available. By doing so, you allow the process to unfold in its own time without forcing it or shutting it down. Ultimately, these intuitive signals are not meant to confuse you. They are meant to guide you. They are pointing towards something that deserves your attention, something that has the potential to bring clarity, understanding, and perhaps even resolution. Ignoring them may delay this process, but acknowledging them quietly and consciously allows you to move closer to the truth that is trying to emerge. What is unfolding between you and this person is not limited to surface-level interaction or simple emotional attachment. It is rooted in a much deeper layer of the psyche, where connections are formed beyond conscious awareness. This kind of bond does not rely only on words, actions, or physical presence, but instead exists within the unconscious, where shared experiences, emotional imprints, and unresolved meanings continue to interact over time. As Carl Jung explained, the unconscious mind holds patterns and connections that shape our perceptions and relationships in ways we do not always consciously recognize. When a connection reaches this level, it begins to operate differently. No longer limited by logic or immediate circumstances, but sustained by the depth of psychological resonance between two individuals. You may have noticed that despite distance, silence, or even attempts to move on, something continues to pull your attention back toward this person. This is not simply habit or memory. It is the result of a bond that has embedded itself within your inner world. Such connections often develop when there has been a significant exchange of authenticity, vulnerability, or emotional truth. These moments create a kind of imprint that does not easily fade, because they touch parts of the psyche that are rarely accessed in ordinary interactions. This is why the connection can feel persistent, almost as if it has a life of its own, continuing to exist even when external communication has stopped. For the other person, this same depth of connection can be both powerful and overwhelming. They may not fully understand why they feel this way or why your presence continues to influence their thoughts and emotions. This lack of understanding can lead to confusion, avoidance, or even denial, as they try to make sense of something that does not fit neatly into their usual way of thinking. However, the unconscious does not require full understanding in order to function. It continues to process and bring forward what is significant, whether or not it is consciously acknowledged. This is why their feelings may resurface repeatedly, even if they have tried to suppress or ignore them. At the same time, this type of connection often serves a purpose beyond the relationship itself. It acts as a mirror, reflecting aspects of yourself that you may not have fully recognized or understood before. Through this connection, you are given the opportunity to explore your own emotional depth, your patterns of attachment, and your capacity for awareness. This does not mean that the connection is meant to define you or control your choices, but rather that it is meant to reveal something important about who you are and how you relate to others on a deeper level. It is also important to recognize that not all deep connections are meant to result in immediate resolution or clear outcomes. Sometimes their purpose is to initiate a process of growth, to bring hidden emotions to the surface, and to encourage a higher level of self-awareness. Chapter 7. Signs you should not ignore. This can make the experience feel uncertain or incomplete, as if something is still missing or unresolved. However, this sense of incompleteness is often part of the process itself, pushing both individuals to continue reflecting, understanding, and evolving. Rather than trying to define the connection too quickly or forcing it into a specific outcome, the more meaningful approach is to stay aware of what it is revealing to you. The depth you feel is not something to ignore or minimize, but it is also not something to lose yourself in completely. It exists as a space between you and the other person, shaped by both of your inner worlds, and it continues to evolve as both of you grow and change. By recognizing this, you allow the connection to serve its purpose without becoming trapped in confusion or expectation. In doing so, you begin to see it for what it truly is, a reflection of something deeper within the human psyche. This moment you are experiencing carries a sense of urgency, not because something external is demanding immediate action, but because internally both you and this other person are approaching a significant psychological turning point that cannot be ignored without consequence. These turning points, as described by Carl Jung, often appear when the unconscious begins to surface truths that have long been hidden or avoided. They are moments where clarity becomes possible, but only if one remains aware and present with what is unfolding. What makes this moment different from ordinary emotional experiences is the intensity and persistence of the signals you are receiving, as if something is trying to ensure it is finally acknowledged. For this person connected to you, this turning point may feel like an internal shift they cannot fully control. They may be recognizing patterns in their own behavior, understanding the emotional weight of their past decisions, or realizing the depth of what they once had with you. This kind of realization does not happen all at once. It unfolds gradually, often accompanied by discomfort, doubt, and hesitation. They may find themselves caught between the desire to act and the fear of what that action might bring. This inner conflict can create a sense of urgency within them, even if it is not visible externally. From the outside, it may still appear as silence or inaction, but internally, something significant is taking place. At the same time, you are also standing at a turning point, but your experience of it is centered more on awareness than on internal conflict. You are being drawn into a position where you can see the connection more clearly, where you can recognize both its depth and its complexity without becoming overwhelmed by it. This is not a passive state. It requires attention and presence. Chapter 8. Final insight you need to hear. The urgency you feel is not about rushing into decisions, but about not missing the opportunity to understand what this moment is revealing to you. When such moments are ignored, they tend to fade back into the unconscious, where they may return later in a more unclear or confusing form. There is also a sense that timing plays an important role here. Psychological turning points do not remain open forever. They are periods where insight, emotion, and awareness align in a way that makes change possible. If this alignment is not recognized, the opportunity for clarity may be delayed. This does not mean that the connection itself will disappear, but it may become less accessible, less immediate, and harder to interpret. This is why the feeling of urgency exists. Not to pressure you into action, but to bring your attention to the importance of staying conscious in this moment. It is important to understand that awareness does not mean control. You cannot force this person to act, nor can you decide how their realization will unfold. What you can do is stay grounded in your own understanding, allowing yourself to observe without becoming reactive. This creates a kind of stability within you, which is essential during moments of psychological intensity. When you are stable and aware, you are less likely to be pulled into confusion or impulsive decisions, and more able to see the situation for what it truly is, This turning point also invites you to reflect on your own role in the connection, not in a way that assigns blame or responsibility, but in a way that deepens your understanding of your own emotional patterns and responses. Every significant connection reveals something about ourselves, and this moment is no exception. By paying attention to what you feel, how you respond, and what you are being drawn to understand, you begin to engage with the experience on a deeper level. This is where true transformation begins, not in external outcomes, but in internal awareness that gradually changes how you see and experience everything around you.